Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. My name's Doug Cunnington, and in this episode, I talked to Mark Mars from Niche Website Builders, and they did a data analysis. A data analysis. That's what it is. And they looked at 5,000 content sites, and they were trying to determine sort of how much content a site needed, and the authority or domain rating as Ahrefs determines it for various thresholds of earnings. So I think it's $1,000, 5,000, and 10,000. And we have some conclusions, or at least some data to look at. So Mark, thanks a lot for doing this experiment. How's it going today?
Very good, thanks, Doug. Yeah, very well. I've recently moved house, so I'm getting used to my new office. The background looks the same to you, but it's very different. So everywhere else.
Yeah. And for people that don't know you, can you give a little intro about your background, how you got into niche sites, and then what you're doing now? And you can make it super brief. You've been on the show 6 times or something, so people probably know of you, but just in case it's their first episode.
Yeah, so my name's Mark Mars. I'm co-founder of Niche Website Builders. Essentially, we're an agency that helps content publishers build profitable content sites. So anything from people just starting out right up to people who are trying to scale up their portfolio.
Perfect. Now let's talk about this, specific analysis that you did. What was the origin? Why did you guys think we want to look at all this data and try to figure out what's going on? And what was the goal?
Yeah, so I think there was the original goal, and then a few other things kind of spun out of the data that we were kind of nice to have, I guess. But I guess one of the most common questions, as like a company who helps people build content sites, is that how much do I need? How much is it going to take me to get to like $1,000 a month, or 5 or 10 or whatever? And the problem we have with that is the answer we'd always give is unsatisfactory in general, although realistic, it's unsatisfactory, because you'd say, well, every niche is different, every site is different. Some start slow, some start quickly. But if you're consistent and you stick at it, you'll get there in the end. And that's the truth. But it's not a good answer, is it? It's not what someone wants to hear. They want to hear hard facts and hard numbers. So the reason we embarked on this project was to try and give people some sort of roadmap, some sort of guidance into this is what it takes to get to those certain thresholds. So that was our goal, really, to begin with, is that we just wanted to have a slightly more conclusive answer to that question.
Right. And that is, super common question. And, the reason people want to know is they don't want to waste their time or effort or resources. So if they're working on something, they want to know that it's going to work. And probably when you and I got started with niche sites, things happen faster. So you maybe could get a site going in 2 or 3 months and make thousands per month. So that was a little faster, and people, were okay to do that. But now to do that, it may take 2 years, which is kind of mind-boggling. But my first site, it really was just a few months, and it really kicked off. It grew fast, and it eventually got penalized. So, maybe that's not the benchmark we want to have. So people want to know if this is going to work and how long it's going to take. Now, where did you get the data for the analysis?
Yeah, so it's a lot of hard graph, but a lot of the data come from Ahrefs. So we're using Ahrefs data in terms of domain rating and traffic and those kind of things. So, and what I will say is that we can't guess the income of every niche site that exists. So we were just basing our findings on ad revenue. So giving an arbitrary EPMV of $25, which is kind of, you might be a bit lower than that, you might be a bit higher than that. It's kind of a good kind of benchmark, really, $25. And therefore we base the income on ad revenue. So we say if it's EPMV of $25 and you get 100,000 visitors a month, then you're going to earn X from that. So really what we're showing is really the minimum level you could get just with ads. If you were to monetize in any other additional ways, then that could be all be on top. And as we know, Ahrefs generally underreports on traffic as well. So again, that's slightly on the pessimistic side as well. So we're just trying to wanted to be realistic, if not a little bit pessimistic in terms of showing people like what they need to do and be realistic in that case.
Okay, cool. And basically, you had, for any analysis like this, you have to make assumptions. So you went through a number of them there. You just assumed ad revenue, because that would be the most conservative way to do it. $25 EPMV, earnings per 1,000 visitors. You looked at the estimated traffic from Hrefs, which is, kind of the benchmark standard. It does often underestimate. So you're aiming on the conservative side. Now, how did you pick these specific sites? So you looked at 5,000, and, this is an area for people that have whatever, like a scientific method background, or, I don't know how to describe it, but I mean, the sample is super important. So if you do an experiment on, college kids at Harvard, those are different than like the general population, which, a lot of psychological experiments end up being students at the given school, which often are like high end. So it's not a very good representative sample. Sure, they can go, outside their university or whatever, but a lot of times that's what happens. I know when I was in college, I did some experiments. Yeah. Did you do that when you were in college?
Yeah. So kind of. I mean, I did a computer science degree, so there was a bit of experimentation in that.
No, I mean, I was a subject. Coding experiments. Yeah. You go in
as a subject, right?
Yeah, you get like extra credit, or they give you like $20 or something.
No, I don't remember. I know we didn't do that.
Okay. Yeah. We had a psychology lab or whatever, so I would go in there. Anyway, how did you pick the sites? How did you get the 5,000 sites?
Yeah, so we did a lot of digging really, and in Ahrefs. So it was looking at competitors and going down that route. So I mean, what I will say is the data is incomplete. We've got another 10,000 sites kind of lined up to add to that as well, because what we want to do is, the goal was to try break it down by niche as well. So we say, if you're in the gardening niche, then this is the data for that niche, and so therefore, we need a good sample size just in gardening as well. So we've got like an overall, and then we've got it broken down by niche. But actually, as we'll see in a bit, like when you unless you're going into super competitive niches, when you break down all of the niches across the board, the results are surprisingly similar from the ones that we do have. So yeah, whether that will be interesting anyway, breaking it down by niche. And when it ends up being kind of roughly the same, it may turn out not to be that interesting. But we want to we've got a goal to get 15,000 in there at the moment.
Got it. And so one thing that I'll do as the interviewer, I'm going to like poke holes, and I mean, the data analysis is fantastic, and we'll be able to draw some conclusions, but there's a couple flaws, right, in going through it. And it doesn't mean that the information and conclusions are not useful. It's just like we have blind spots. So what you just said is like, oh, it looks pretty much the same across the different industries, but you're assuming like $25 across the board. But we know like business and financial is going to be completely different as a hobby than a hobby one. Like the EPMVs are going to be completely different, right? So do you account for that kind of stuff?
No, not at the moment anyway. So no, I guess what I mean by similar is like what we're measuring really is like how many pieces of content does the site have, and what's the DR of that site to get to a certain level. So yeah, you're right. Like I think EPMVs will be different, although you can't predict those either. Like you'll find two sites in the same niche and they'll be wildly different.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. So as soon as we start trying to make other assumptions, then they fall apart too. So, okay. The other question before we get to the results here, you were looking at sites that got a certain amount of traffic and potentially are successful, right? So that's how you selected them. Mm-hmm. There's probably a survivorship bias there, right? Those are the ones that worked. Yeah. So there could be sites that maybe they have the right amount of content, but they don't have like a high enough DR. Maybe they do have a high DR and the traffic's low, but basically, do you have a good spread of successful sites versus non-successful sites, or is it all successful sites that you looked at?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we've been talking to some data scientists to try and get I don't know, I guess to glean even more insight out of the data that we already have that we would, as non-data scientists, would be able to do. And actually, there wasn't that. One of the things was survivor bias that we kind of wanted to be able to like dig into a little bit. The problem with that is that the data scientist has no idea either, like how many sites succeed or fail. So I think at the moment, what we're doing is we're showing just sites that are at the level that we want them to be. Now, beyond that, we can start to make some assumptions like, okay, let's assume that over a course of time, like 10% of sites fail for whatever reason. They get hit by an update or whatever. We can't really count somebody who gives up because like they gave up. It was a human thing. So, but it's impossible to see those sites have failed because they don't exist anymore. It's impossible for us to count them because we can't. They're gone. Right. They don't exist anymore. Or we only started at a level of like 25,000 visitors, like as per Ahrefs as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not really easy to work out how many. I don't know unless you can think of a way, but we couldn't come up with a way of like working out the percentage of sites that might fail over time.
No. And by the way, I'm not, for people that are listening, I'm not trying to poke holes. I'm just asking questions. So it's not that I agree. It's just, these are questions that need to be asked. And like when you're doing an experiment, like you guys are probably asking the same questions, like how is someone going to discredit any of our conclusions? And then you try to figure out like, how can we do that? Or how can we say like, here are the flaws, right? So back in the corporate world, in the, many of the documents, it's like we list out the potential successes and we list out the potential failure parts because everyone needs to know the full context, not just focusing on the good parts. So, okay. So have a bunch of data. And the thing is, like, I don't know how you would account for the unsuccessful sites, but I could think of an example how you might find, it may not get the traffic, the 2,500 or 25,000 visitors per month, but like link building content mill type sites. So this could be an expired domain that had, good metrics. People can juice up the domain rating by sending a bunch of, links over to it with, blog networks of some kind or some other kind of gray hat link building, right? They could also publish a ton of content because they're doing it as a link building activity for a company, right? So there's services that just build links. They maybe have, 5,000 pieces of content. They have a high domain rating of like 60. And I've seen plenty of these sites out there. Right? Yeah. And they're not getting much traffic though. They might get a little bit, but typically they would look like a huge site with like a ton of links, but it's really just a garbage site. So yeah. And you guys went through and like looked at each one of the sites individually, right?
That's right. Yeah. So you can see that in the data. We've got like a scatter graph as well. So you can see like, those that are performing above and below average and, those outliers, both in terms of that they're doing well with only with a low domain rating and like a few pieces of traffic, right down to the ones that like you just described there.
Okay. Now let's get to the data. So before we get to it, is there anything else that you need to share about like the analysis or the context? And then I'll let you share your screen. And then we can get into it. And for the people that are just listening, we'll put a link out there to look at the Google Doc that has the data and the scatter graph and all the other information. So Mark, is there anything else that you need to tell us about before you share some results?
Yeah, so we haven't got a link to share at the moment, but we're definitely going to share it at some point in the future, in the next few weeks. So probably the best thing to do is to sign up to our mailing list at nichewebsite.builders and go to the content page, and then you'll see it when it comes when we mail it over to you. But yeah, I guess there's a few other things that we managed to kind of get out of this, which we kind of didn't really plan for at the beginning. So I guess in terms of niche research, it was really useful finding out what sites are doing well and why. So we could kind of really dig into those. So we could like really find those outlier sites, and really great for like our tomb rating exercise as well, where we try and find the sites that are of lower authority that are doing well, that are kind of overperforming and how we can kind of look to rank for the keywords and topics that they're already ranking for. It's also great, we found, for uncovering sub niches that we've not considered before. So you might look at a site and go, well, that site's doing really well. When you dig into it, there's a whole sub niche which is underserved. That is like that all their traffic is going to that you hadn't considered. So then, we found that that's a good way of finding those sub niches that are underserved that we can kind of dig into as well.
Okay. Can you give an example of that?
Oh, gosh.
Maybe come back to it if you don't have one handy, but yeah.
Yeah, not off the top of my head.
Okay. All right. Should I share your screen now or?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. So we're looking at basically a chart. So like Mark said, you could hop over, sign up for their email list, and then you'll be able to get a copy of this whenever they distribute it. So yeah, what are we looking at here? What do we need to know?
Yeah, so I guess you can, if you're on the podcast version, this would be hard for you to see, but you can go and check it out on Doug's YouTube channel for the full thing. But I'll try and describe it as best I can. So what we're showing here is a list of the 5,000 sites. We're in the process of categorizing them into niches. So we've got a few gaps kind of here. But what it shows is a table. Oh, so basically we've banded all of these sites into different bandings. So 10 to 25K. Oh, sorry, we started at 10K. I lied. 25 to 50K, 50K to 150, and then like bands up to 1 million.
And that's traffic, right? So that's traffic.
That's right. Yeah. So traffic banding. Sorry. Yeah. So then what we can see is there's a table here which shows all sites combined. So this is not niche specific. This is just all of the sites together. And we can see that if we want to get to across these 5,000 sites, if we want to get to $1,000 a month, then on average, we need 383 pieces of content and we need a DR of 35. So what we found, this is really good for, like I say, giving that roadmap. So somebody might come to us and have 400 pieces of traffic, but their DR is just like down at 5 or 6. They're not getting the domain rating is down 4, 5 or 6. They're not getting the traffic they're expecting, and they're not making any money from the site. So we say, look, this is where you should really focus your attention on your link building because you've got plenty of content on at the moment. Also, vice versa, if someone's working with an age domain, they might already have a decent domain rating. It's just that we need to focus on content to kind of get them to that level. But what I thought was really interesting, or the most interesting about this data, is that if you see, to get to $1,000, we're talking about 400 pieces of content, DR35. To get to 3x that, so heading towards $3,000, say, it only takes 2/3 of the content again. So he had other 200 pieces of content, right? 605 pieces of content, and a DR42. So we've only skipped up 7 DR points here to get to 3,000. Look at the next one up. So we're at nearly $6,000 here. We've only got 800 pieces of content. So we've only got double the number of pieces of content that it took to get to $1,000. But now we're at $6,000 with a DR46, and it's 11 DR points higher, which is not something that's completely. 46 might sound a lot to people, and getting from 35 to 6 isn't insignificant, but it's not something that's impossible either. It's not such a high DR that you'd never expect to get there.
Right.
So that was something that was really insightful for us, and we found really interesting that the more content you put on, the better the return kind of over time, I guess.
Sure. Okay. And one thing, that jumps out. So you mentioned the DR46 for that particular traffic area band, which is 150K to 250K. So quick note, I know I've covered this in the past, but I had a site that you guys worked on with a Shotgun Skyscraper campaign for about 5 or 6 months. I think maybe it was 6 months. And you guys got me from a 0 DR to like a 48 in 6 months. Mm-hmm. And it was within the first 6 months. And I didn't have nearly as much traffic. Now, an interesting point. So I have a site that's actually getting, it's probably in the band of 50K to 150K. And it has, 200 pieces of content. It has a very low EPMV just because of the specific pages that get a lot of traffic. They just are not very commercially driven. So it's earning, a quarter of what the estimate is on the estimated revenue, which is about $2,800 or so. And, it's earning, far under what the assumption is. On the other side of this, right? So on the other side, we have basically sites that are monetized with mostly affiliate. Maybe they have like 100 pieces of content and they get, 50,000 visitors a month and they're making like $20,000 a month, right? So there's huge range, but it kind of narrows it down as far as expectations, like you're saying. So it's a huge range.
Yeah, I mean, this is average, but obviously we have sites that massively overperform, mostly underperform. But the good thing about this average, and I guess that's another thing that we got from this data that we weren't expecting, was that we, if our site is underperforming the average, we can then go and check. Maybe it's time to revisit those competitors and go, okay, what are they doing that I'm not doing? Is it their backlink profile that's helping them? Is it the way they structured their site or their pages? Have they got an FAQ section with schema? Like, what is it that they've got that I haven't got? And so that that was like another thing that we saw. I think we're underperforming the average. Why?
Got it. Okay. Cool. So anything else on this particular chart?
Yeah, I will quickly go off because it's probably boring for the podcast people. But there's another table down here where we've got a drop down for a bunch of different niches. So it's on food at the moment. We've got 615 sites that are categorized in the food section there. What you can see for them is that actually of the sites that we've got, and this might be the not being data statistically significant, but it's saying we've got a DR12 of 96 to get to 96 pages to get to a 643 income, but then it jumps up very rapidly to 43. But again, we kind of see the similar kind of jumps here, where the more content you put on, like the better return on investment per piece of content that you get. But we've got this broken down, and some of them have got more sites than others. But as I say, we haven't categorized even these first 5,000 yet, but we're going to get another 10,000 in there to break that down as well. I guess the other thing to show is the scatter graph. I mean, it's kind of what everyone expects, but it's kind of nice to see it. So we've got the graph shows the DR versus monthly visitors. So the DR is along the bottom here, and it's kind of like an exponential graph. So the spacings don't kind of make sense. We've got 1, 5, 10, 50 here. And then we've got the monthly visitors up to 1 million at the top here. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of definitely see that the higher the DR, you can expect higher monthly visitors over time. That graph's quite clearly showing that. On the second one is the number of pages versus the monthly visitors. Again, you'd expect if you have more pages, you're going to rank for more keywords and you're going to get more monthly visitors. So nothing entirely surprising here, but kind of a graph that shows that along the bottom, 100 pieces of content, 1,000, 10,000 there.
Gotcha. And they're both on logarithmic scales, right? So it looks a little bit different because, I mean, the one thing that I can see on the number of pages versus monthly visitors, it looks like up to about 1,000, it makes a pretty big difference. But beyond 1,000 or maybe 2,000 or so, it sort of drops off. So there's sort of diminishing returns. Is that about right? Do you see that too, Mark?
Yeah, so I guess what is funny here is that from 1,000 you kind of got this little jump, and then here you kind of got a jump. But I think that might be because we're missing some sites. Or maybe we haven't got some sites in that range. Or we haven't worked out whether that's Ahrefs, our data, or something else. But kind of looks a bit strange. But I don't know. So I guess so. I think we just have less sites up at this high range, which kind of makes it maybe look a little bit like it's diminishing returns. Because there's just less sites that are getting the higher levels of traffic. Oh, and there's much more down at this level here.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's probably true. There's just fewer sites with 5,000 pieces of content, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, cool. Anything else with this graph?
Nope. That's it.
All right, great. So we have some broad conclusions. And the initial question that you were looking to answer here is how much content and DR do I need to get to 1,000, 5,000, and 10,000? So do you have a concise answer for that, or is it just something you have to kind of peruse the data?
Yeah, I mean, it shows it on the data. So we got one that shows 992, so basically 1,000 there. What was the other one? 5,000. We got 5,700. I mean, yeah, essentially, yeah, this answers not just that, but other right up to 20,000 in this case, monthly revenue.
Okay.
So
yeah. Can you summarize it quickly for everyone? So how much content and what DR do you need for $1,000, and then go up to 5 and then 10K?
Yeah, so $1,000. We're at DR35, 383 pages. For 5,000, so I've got 5,798, so closer to 6,000. We're looking at a DR46 with 807 pages. And for 10,561 on average, we're looking at a DR51 with 1,203 pages. That's based on,
okay,
the data that we've got, yeah.
All right. Well, like we said, we can share the data that you have, and you guys will be adding 10,000 more sites over some period of time. Sounds like the analysis takes a little while, right?
Yeah, it'll take a few months to do that, but Elena's been tasked with a lot of that, pulling that data together. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Amazing. Well, this is pretty cool, Mark, and thanks a lot for sharing. And looking forward to hearing how, I think you'll maybe have some, different general conclusions as you get more data, or it'll just confirm what you're looking at. Additionally, once a lot of people look at this, I bet people will suggest different ways to look at it, or consider the survivorship bias or something like that. So you may shift how you're looking at the data too. Mm-hmm. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that'd be interesting if anyone's got any input for sure.
All right. So for people that want to check out some of the stuff that you guys are doing at Niche Website Builders, we'll put links and all that. And actually, this is part of a double episode. So we are going to be talking just a few minutes, Mark, about the digital PR service. So you guys have that. You have content, other link building stuff. Where do people go?
So yeah, head straight to nichewebsite.builders, and you can check us out there. We've got a YouTube channel, so you can check that on we've got a video tab, and we've got some Facebook groups as well, Niche Website Builders and Niche Website Flippers, so you can go and check those out too.
Cool. And this is actually coming out on Thanksgiving, so there's Black Friday deals, and you can go directly to the site. But if you want to help me out, you can use my affiliate link, and there's some discount codes and some other stuff, and then Mark will give me a commission, basically. So if you want to help me out, I really appreciate it. So thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you in a minute here.
Great. Thanks, Doug.